Hello guys, welcome back to Cobalt Elbow. Today I'm going to be talking about one of my pieces of treasure that I extracted from the land of the nerds. I used to be hugely into this game called Starcraft 2. It's one of the most hardcore competitive video games in history. It kind of started the whole esports movement, like League of Legends and Dota and Counter-Strike and all that stuff. Starcraft paved the trail for all of that. Super hardcore game. It's like a test of brain power. And I'm here to share with you guys one of the treasures from that game that I think applies to arm wrestling, and really it applies to all sports. There hasn't been any competitive endeavor that I've gone into where this principle wasn't relevant. This principle I'm going to talk about today is the distinction between macro and micro. Your mind probably goes to macronutrients and micronutrients. It's kind of related, but no, that's actually not what I'm talking about. We're talking about macro management and micro management. So, macro management refers to the big picture, the whole system. Micromanagement refers to minor details and specifics. In arm wrestling, what I'm saying is that macro management refers to your overall lifestyle, your health, strength, and fitness, while micromanagement refers to the specifics of your technique, the specifics of the lifts that you're doing, and all of the little things that you do on the table. Why is this an important distinction? Well, depending on what format of competition you're in, it might be worth it to prioritize one over the other. For example, in StarCraft, it was pretty much always the case that macro management was more important than micromanagement. It was an army building game. Macro was the part of the game that involves building your army. Doesn't matter how good you are at controlling your army if it's 10 times as small as the enemies, right? So that was kind of the idea in StarCraft. You macro to be bigger than the other guy. Well, it's very easy to port that same idea into arm wrestling, right? What is macro in arm wrestling? That's your diet, your nutrition, your sleep, your exercise, just your overall strength, your overall physical strength, and all the things that contribute to that. The micro is your technique. How do you grip up with the guy? What do you do when the ref says ready, go? Where do you put your elbow? How do you put your feet? All that's micro. I think arm wrestling is like StarCraft. I think the macro game is far more important. I think that the individual who has their lifestyle and health and fitness and strength at a high level is going to beat the person who has all of the little micro details at a high level. And, the classic example there is just take any beginner or amateur in the super heavyweight class and put them up against the very best of a microweight class. It doesn't matter. The microweight class guy could be an absolute master of arm wrestling, but it's not going to matter if the 280-pound dude on the other side of the table is immovable. So the macro game of arm wrestling is becoming the 280-pound dude, more or less. It's living the lifestyle that is conducive to strength. Living the lifestyle, eating the food, sleeping the sleep, walking the walk, doing the training. The simple stuff, the boring stuff, which is, I've said this many times before, it's a little bit disappointing how boring arm wrestling can be. It literally is just a game of get stronger sometimes. But if you focus on that side of things, you understand that it's a game of just get stronger, then you won't waste your time floundering around trying to learn all the different micro movements and all the little technical nuances, which, don't get me wrong, there's nothing wrong with learning that stuff, but don't learn that stuff at the expense of just developing your macro game, your strength, In StarCraft, macro is always the main priority, and then when you had all of your macro completed and you're done with the chores, so to say, then you can micro, then you can play around with positioning your army members and doing all the little micro details. But anytime you let that macro slip and you take your eyes off of, eyes off of your base, so to speak, there's always opportunities for leakage there, and for you to not grow as fast as you could be growing. And so, yeah, I think us arm wrestlers got to think the same way. The macro game's critical. Your sleep's critical. Your hydration's critical. Your protein intake. Your collagen and calcium intake, so your tendons can grow. The whole gamut of basic health optimization practices for strength. If you're missing any of those elements, that's almost more of a mistake than actually making a mistake on the table. Because mistakes on the table can be rectified by just being strong. You can pull wrong and still win if you're really fucking strong. But you can pull right and still lose if you're really weak. You know what I'm saying? So what's more important? Knowing how to pull right, or just getting really fucking big and strong? I don't know. I think I'm pretty well convinced that the strength is what matters. The technique is secondary. But what do you think? You might have a different opinion, but I'll just leave you guys with Bob Brown's opinion to cap off the video. Thanks for watching. Hopefully this was thought-provoking. Have a great day.
At the end of the day, you got to get stronger. I mean, that 9 times out of 10, technique is, it only helps so much. You just got to get stronger.